All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the May 1st, 2025 Inspector General Committee meeting to order. And if Mr. Clerk, if you'd call the roll.
State Attorney Alexia Cox. Vice Chair Cruz.
Here.
Public Defender Daniel Eisinger. Here. Chair Kreidel. Commissioner Kugler. Commissioner Romano.
Here.
Commissioner Vara Garcia.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay. Just one introductory comment. I'd like to welcome our new Palm Beach County Public Defender, Daniel Eisinger, to the Inspector General Committee, and we're glad to have you here.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Glad to be here.
All right. Okay, item number 4, approval of the Inspector General Committee meeting minutes of December 5th, 2024. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. For our Inspector General, John Carey, we'll welcome you to the podium to give the 6-month status report. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. You see, is my microphone on?
It's not.
It's not. The microphone on this side? Okay. Test.
You okay?
Okay. Before you start, General Carey,
Hello, I'm Rodney.
I'd like to welcome our new Palm Beach County, she's not that new now, State Attorney Alexia Cox. Welcome, Madam State Attorney. Okay. Mr. Carey.
Okay, good afternoon, and welcome new members. Ms. Cox, Mr. Eisinger, thank you for joining the team, and again, look forward to working with you in the years ahead. So, again, today's going to be our 6-month update. I want to first thank Barbara Bellafiore for putting this all together and getting us together and everything it takes to just get folks here and get us up and running. So thank you, Barbara. I always like to start out with our mission to kind of talk about who and what we are. And it's not just for the committee, but it's for the public watching. It's the office word. Our mission, we are to provide independent and objective insight, oversight, and foresight in providing integrity, efficiency, and overall effectiveness in government. And when I say insight, we're that independent agency that is able to come along organizations and look at processes and provide insight in best practices, how we can be doing our operations better. And then the oversight is what we're most known for by the public, is compliance. When people are we compliant with the rules, the regulations, the laws, and we find that through our audits and reviews, and if there's complaints, we investigate according to the standards, the criteria. And then finally, foresight is looking ahead, is trying to prevent bad things from happening, trying to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse, and looking forward and how we can put controls in place to help us from going off the tracks. So those are what I talk about often: insight, oversight, and foresight in our mission. And ultimately, we're here to try to enhance our public trust in government, or I like to often say, make good government better. So that's really what we're here for, that independent agency to be able to do that. Here's where we're going today, our roadmap. And I'm going to start out with a review of some terminology, and then we'll talk about personnel highlights and then get into our operations. First, to start out with terminology. And this is important. Most professional agencies, organizations, professions have their own terminology, their jargon. And so I want to go over some terminology that is peculiar to Inspector General offices. First of all, you're going to see in a lot of our reports, very common, question cost. And question cost is defined, that definition comes from the 1978 Inspector General Act at the federal level. And not only all federal inspector generals use that, but this terminology has been adopted by states and local, and so many IGs across the United States use the same type of terminology. So this question cost, what that means is it's questioned because it may be a violation of a provision of law or regulation or contract, a grant, a policy, or other documents that are governing the expenditures. It also can be sometimes a finding that the cost of, or the financial obligation is not supported by adequate documentation. And then finally, it could be a category of expenditures of funds that the intended purposes are unnecessary or unreasonable. And it's just some examples, and you're going to see some of those during our presentation. But for example, a city is not obtaining, this is common on travel costs. They have a policy, there's your lodging and your parking, and when we do an audit, even though it's in their policy, they're not requiring the travelers to provide that. And so that would be question cost in the fact that they're not complying with their documentation and providing the accurate documentation. Because again, then it could be, did parking cost, $10 or $50? And so that's why you use receipts. It could be something like a vendor, and we found this a number of times, where a vendor is not submitting the manufacturer's receipt if it's a contract to do service plus parts, where a vendor's supposed to put part of the contract, I'm to fix whatever, the air conditioning for you, and I'm also to provide you with the original manufacturing parts, and then to pass on those parts. Well, if sometimes they don't, the agencies have not required them to supply that vendor receipt, and so we cannot really track, did they get that part or not? And so that would be a question cost. Question cost could also be something like letting of a contract, where the contract procedures in a city or the county, there's certain rules in bidding out for competitive bidding, and they didn't follow their competitive bidding processes, didn't require the things that was in their regulation from the vendors who are submitting bids, and they just passed it on through. That could be question cost. So it's a wide variety of things that can be question cost. It doesn't necessarily mean, again, that I like to generalize this term as we're really not properly accounting for taxpayer dollars. That's really, in essence, what that is. We're not properly accounting for the taxpayers to show them we're spending our money the way we should be spending it and where we should be spending it. It is not necessarily it's unaccounted for, that it is lost, or we don't, did not get a service or a good, but we don't know if we got our money's worth, the right money's worth. So that's a lot of times what question costs are. Again, so as such, not all question costs are indicative of fraud, waste, or abuse. The problem is with no documentation, or if they don't follow it, we don't know. We don't, somebody tells me, did we lose that money or not if we're not keeping proper records? Did somebody steal that money? I don't know. We haven't found any other red flags. If we find other red flags, well, then we'll investigate. But many times, if we're just not tracking our taxpayer dollars, I really can't say whether it's lost or not. And also, these costs may represent improper or inadequate accounting of taxpayer dollars. Now, the next term you'll see in our reports is potential cost savings. And there's two categories of potential cost savings. One is identified cost or avoidable cost. And identified costs are those costs or dollars that have the potential of being returned, that we can potentially recoup those. For example, a traveler, some of the most basic, an individual traveled and provided false documentation of their travel, said that they stayed in a hotel, but instead, and wanted the recoupment for that, but they really stayed in a relative's house. Those are the types of funds that we can recoup, that the city or the county could potentially recoup from individuals. Now, another category in that potential cost savings is avoidable costs. And these are future costs that may be realized, saved, if they enact our recommendation. For example, let's say that we found that a city was overpaying a vendor for years. They were getting goods and services. Well, not only would we identify some cost savings that they may be able to recoup, but also we will project up to 3 years out, and this is a common Inspector General accounting practice, is up to 3 years out, that because we identified you paying this much, so in the next 3 years, by implementing our recommendation, you can save this amount of money by not paying them what you have been paying them for years. But we only go out 3 years, unless it's a contract, and then it'd be the life of whatever contract that was. Now, highlights. We have one new member that joined us, Janika Cherry. Are you here, Janika? Janika, yes. We are so great to have Janika with us as our intake specialist. She comes to us from Palm Beach State College, where she was there a student life coordinator, and then before that, she spent 10 years as an executive assistant to a principal in the Palm Beach County school system. So she's got a lot of experience and skills that already making a great impact in our intake office. So welcome aboard, Janika. Some other highlights over the past 6 months. Lisa Inkle, she went and was certified as a IG at our institute as a certified IG inspector evaluator. Lisa, there you are. And Sabrina Tomlinson was certified as an IG auditor. Sabrina's not here. Sonia McNair was certified as a certified IG investigator. So she's dual. Our folks in the contract oversight and evaluation, we get them dual certified, not only as inspector evaluators, because that's a good portion of their work is out there inspecting, evaluating projects and procurement matters, but they also, on the other side of the coin, if there's complaints related, people will often complain about improper procurement processes, so they do investigations on that, so that they're dual certified. Calinthia Dillard, during this past 6 months, a couple awards, her continuing saga of awards that Calinthia has received. This time she received our Palm Beach County Bar Association Professionalism Award. And I know a number of you as attorneys out there know this is one of the most prestigious awards we can get for our attorneys. So she received that. Also, she, from the Executive Women of Palm Beach County, she received the award of the Leadership Award for Women in Leadership. So received that. Not noted, she's also the president, of the Forum Club. She's outgoing this year. She's the president of the Forum Club. And I don't think I mentioned too, she was elected on our National Association of Inspector General. She is now on the board of the National Association of Inspectors General. So again, it's great to have you around, Calinthia. Okay, so now we're going to go into the operational aspects of our work, and I'm going to turn it over to Stu Robinson, Director of Investigations, to talk about our intake and investigations.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our
new members of the board. My name is Stuart Robinson. I'm the Director of Investigations for the office. I'd also like to recognize Chris Dykman, our investigative supervisor, is here, and Evangeline Rentz, our intake manager. Investigations often are judged in terms of consequences. So along John's lines, we're going to go through some investigative highlights for this 6 months that can be measured in dollars and cents or prosecutions. And others that I think you'll see the real value of the work our investigative and intake team does that go far beyond being measured in financial costs or in prosecutions. And I'll show you both versions, so let's see if I can get this right. First, the raw numbers, and post-COVID era, the amount of intake is a focus of ours because during the COVID era, assistance fraud, people potentially attempting to defraud county programs, created an extraordinarily large amount of intake. But the challenge has been, and met by Ms. Rentz's team, now with Janika, to keep that intake going. And it's really an all-office challenge. Every time we do our investigative audit and contract oversight work, we're focused on increasing the intake. We want the public to know we're out there. We want to do outreach, and we want the public and government to know that we are a resource that can make a difference. And our intake has been relatively consistent throughout the past 6 months from the 6 months prior, as has our investigative reports results. So now let's get to some of the highlights. The first highlight investigation, this one was briefed to the Oversight Committee briefly 6 months ago because it was into the media, but now it was a full report published in the last 6 months. This is an extraordinarily vivid example of the work that the Inspector General's office can do that can't be measured yet in prosecutions. It might be, and can't be measured necessarily in dollars and cents. So the lead investigation on our Riviera Beach water contamination matter were Cynthia Suriel and Leo Briones. They were tasked with an initial allegation that was from the Riviera Beach City Commission and in the media that there was one well in Riviera Beach that tested positive for E. coli, fecal contamination, should have been notified to the Florida Department of Health immediately, and should have had immediate notice to the public. And the allegation was it didn't happen. So the Department of Health has a role as the water experts. They look at potential contamination. They test waters. They look at reporting of contamination. But they don't look at who may have been responsible or what can be done to fix it the way the Inspector General's office did. So we found, in addition to that one well that tested positive for E. coli that wasn't reported, we found that on over 130 occasions, water contamination was not reported to the Department of Health. And on multiple occasions, documents were falsified and altered to put contaminated wells back into service, put the water into homes and businesses in Riviera Beach, deliberately by the executive staff of the Riviera Beach Utilities District, not reported to the Department of Health. Employees knew, did nothing to stop it. So on over 130 occasions, deliberately, evidence of water contamination was not reported to the Department of Health. Our investigators obtained confessions from water testing employees and from the compliance director of the then compliance director of the utilities district that they knew what they were doing, and it happened anyway. The executive director himself was found by our investigators to have deliberately misled the public, the City Commission, and the Department of Health. In total, the entire executive, before I give you the bottom line, if you can see the example of one of the water submissions, briefly, on the left is the actual water submission that came back from the testing lab, and you see a P for total coliform, which means presence. But the same report that was altered and then turned in for the same well to the Department of Health, you see on the right, where that P for presence of total coliform is, it was altered, photoshopped, to put an A there, absent of total coliform. By doing that, a well was put back into service that was testing positive. And it was discovered through the hard work of our investigators, who painstakingly took thousands of documents and compared them side by side until they found discrepancies and talked to people and asked the right questions. I also want to recognize that there's a real public need to get the results out quickly so that people that aren't involved in the wrongdoing aren't unnecessarily attached to it, and so that people that are involved are held accountable. And the entire executive staff of the Utilities District of Riviera Beach was held accountable. Every single one of them resigned during our investigation. And then once our report came out, Dr. Anthony Williams, who was the compliance director that admitted that he turned in all of these, submitted all of these falsified documents, he was by then the compliance director at Delray Beach Water and resigned upon the issuance of our report. So the consequences: professional licensing organizations are involved. Law enforcement is actively involved as we speak, so I won't comment on what their conclusions might be. This is a prime example of the good work that our investigative staff does without a dollars and cents attachment to it. I'm sorry, this. Next, an assistance fraud report with Hugo Bellinger as the lead investigator. A young couple in Lake Worth, in West Palm Beach, they were evicted from their parents' residence. Few months later, the COVID era hit, and they put in multiple applications for rental assistance using the address of the residence that they'd been evicted from. They'd never lived there again. Law enforcement and the state attorney's office has been notified and are involved. Last investigative highlight I'll show you is a lead administrative assistant at a Wellington, Florida doctor's office claimed in rental assistance documents that she needed assistance because she had been laid off from work during COVID era. She forged multiple letters from the MD, from the doctor's office, the doctor himself, and received $12,000 plus of rental assistance. Law enforcement, again, is involved. By the way, those assistance investigations have some next level value. Every time we put one of these out, the county uses our reports to ban these people from future assistance applications in the system. They share those results with other assistance agencies throughout Florida that they share databases with, and word gets out. And we're trying to have a preventative effect. We may not stop all of this fraud, we won't. But we can have a preventative effect on future frauds by putting the word out that the Inspector General's office, along with law enforcement, are watching, doing something about it. Also of note, we've received the county has received over $250,000 of recoupments of real dollars back to the taxpayers as a result of our investigations. Two other things of note. Again, Hugo Bellinger is the lead investigator, an investigation that was referred to after a whole lot of work by Hugo, an investigation that was referred to the West Palm Beach Police Department. The charges are anonymized right now, but over $75,000 of fraud by a property manager that was using empty units as the basis for receiving rental assistance, with the checks being sent to the property manager's office and then cashed by this property manager. So charges, but is not public yet. One last thing, the State Commission on Ethics found probable cause against a past city manager of Pahokee, Mr. Greg Thompson. From one of our full investigations, the basis for their probable cause was our investigative report and our case files. So former city manager Thompson was relieved of his duties upon our report, and he was found to have engineered the sale of 2 city all-terrain vehicles, expired equipment, found himself to be the winning bidder for both of those vehicles, even though he didn't place a bid, and then sold them for a profit. So State Commission on Ethics has found probable cause for ethical violations by him, and their final judgment should be forthcoming in the next 6 months. Thank you very much for your time. Any questions?
Was he criminally prosecuted?
He was not.
Why?
I wouldn't want to speculate. We refer these, there's so many factors that go into whether something's criminally prosecuted. So it's a law enforcement decision as to what resources they want to put towards our matters.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Stu. Yeah, and we refer many things to law enforcement, and it's not just the law enforcement agencies, but again, as the state attorney's office, they've got to hire, they've got to be able to prove it in court with, the whole witnesses. So there's a lot of other factors sometimes that we can have clearly the preponderance of evidence to make our decision. That's our height and goal that inspector generals use, the preponderance of evidence, non-criminal, that we can, more likely than not, that we can say that we believe this happened, but to prosecute is a higher level to prosecute. So that's a lot of times when you're trying to, make those determinations when you're trying to go to a jury or not, and to a money level. There's a number of things, just dollar level, and a lot of different factors that go in.
Is there a, not just talking about him in particular, but in cases like that, is there a record so that when a person goes to apply for the same job somewhere else, like the Delray Beach guy that Stu talked about, that will follow them so that somebody else doesn't get hoodwinked at another city?
Well, we've been called up at times by other agencies who just do a simple Google search. That's a lot of times you do a simple Google search, and these folks' name will show up, and then it'll track back to our office. So if there's something that we do often, that again, that we track back to ours, and dependent on the instant, like with these COVID cases, they do go into the county file that they share files with other folks. But different cases like this one in Pahokee, there's not a national or a state database other than using that almighty Google to find it, which folks should do. And it's amazing how many times we've found other cities that we found have hired people that have had cases, and all of a sudden they found out, oh, we should have Googled them, and we would have found out that our office had conducted an investigation. So now we're going to talk about contract oversight and evaluations. And again, the director, Tony Montero, is going to come up and talk to us. And again, I brag on Tony again and his staff. He is so well known. He not only teaches at our Inspector General Institute, our academy that trains inspector generals from across the country, in fact internationally. He trains there on procurement matters, but he's been asked to speak and train in numerous agencies in the state. He's put on webinars for our association across, so he's a in-demand expert in procurement and contracting, and we're just so fortunate to have Tony here. So Tony, I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon. My name's Tony Montero, Director of Contract Oversight and Evaluations. Let's see. Great. So this is our stats for the current 6 months. One of the things that you'll notice is our ongoing formal reviews and evaluations has increased. So these are formal reviews. A lot of the work that we do, we'll look at a bid activity, we'll look at contracts, we'll see what activities are going on in a municipality or in the county, and we'll, based on various risk factors, we'll decide, hey, maybe this is something, we'll just follow it and monitor it. If nothing comes of it, we just continue monitoring it and until it gets awarded or until some certain point. When we turn it into a formal review, that means that we have opened a file on it, we have a plan, we're formalizing the review procedures in anticipation that a report may come out of it, may or may not, but for the moment, we're taking a formal path. We see something and we're trying to make sure that we document everything properly. So we had a big increase in that in the past 6 months. We also had a big increase in investigative activities that we were assigned. These are the complaints that come in, and it seems like during the winter months we get a lot of complaints, and then we resolve a lot of them during the summer months, and then the cycle repeats again. So that's an interesting stat. I'll keep watching that. Okay. So one of the things about contract oversight is a lot of the work that we do, you don't see it because a lot of it is under the waterline. We'll do a lot of complaint inquiries, we monitor, review, advise. So there's a lot of other work that we do that doesn't show up in a report or that you don't see on a website somewhere. And that's what I'm going to talk about a lot today. One of the things that we try and do is make sure that our time is effectively used. We're a small team, but we try and make sure we get out there. We also try and make sure that we're not biased in anything that we do. We don't want one entity to feel like we're picking on them, and so we're always constantly checking to make sure that, we're looking where we need to look, and we're not targeting any one group. So one of the things is that we look at the total number of activities that we do, and you could see the county and the municipalities. We got a pretty decent split there. In fact, in the municipalities, 52% of our activities were on a municipality, and we actually covered 17 unique municipalities out of the 39 that there are. So in a 6-month cycle, we effectively did oversight on 17 of the cities in Palm Beach County. Another thing that we look at is the money, the dollar value, and you could see it's fairly split there. The joint project, county municipality, that's the surtax program. And that was a voter initiative, a 10-year surtax, and it's coming to an end. It's actually going to sunset a year earlier. They hit the cap on the program, and I think it's $1.3 billion. And so they've collected all the money that the ordinance authorized, so now they're going to sunset it by the end of the year, which is convenient because now the school board's surtax can start up. You can only have one surtax in a county active at one time, so that's something that we've been monitoring all these years, and we'll continue. So the other things that we look at is we just want to make sure that we don't focus like totally on construction or totally on services. So we also try and look at what type of commodities are involved in what we're looking at. And we could see here that, we have a pretty even split. We're trying to spread it around, make sure we get grant activities, look at some construction, look at some services. We issued one tips and trends. This was a monster tips and trends. Lisa Inkle did it for us. It's a legal quagmire trying to understand what they wrote in the statutes, and thankfully we have Calinthia to help us out. So she did a lot of work on this too. They took a small reference in the statutes that they added a few years ago, and they added a lot to it. And basically what it is public-private partnerships is where you're working with a vendor, developer, an independent public party, and you're going to do some sort of a relationship, usually on a big ticket dollar project, where you're both sharing in something. Dr. Cruz probably knows all about it with universities. There's a lot of that. You know, we'll build housing, but we get to, collect the housing fees for the next 10 years or 20 years to help pay it off, and then we'll turn it back over to the university. So those types of things have gone on. Well, now that same ability is going into the cities and into the county, the local governments. So the legislature came up and added this statute. And so if it's a qualified project, the municipality can go out, or the county, they can go out and solicit for a public-private partnership. Another way they could do it is if they get an unsolicited proposal in. Vendor submits a proposal that says, hey, I could put a new marina in for you, and we'll share the revenue, and we'll do this. I just need, access to the land, or whatever the deal is. So in an unsolicited proposal, the statutes specify an application fee to help offset the cost, where they're now mandating an A&E, architect and engineer, has to review the proposal. And then it's up to the entity to decide, do we want to bid it, or do we just want to move to an award and try and make this deal happen individually? So there's a lot of structure that they added to this in order to facilitate that decision-making process. One of them, there's a comprehensive agreement at the end, and so you have to determine that it is a public interest. The ownership has to be squared away. Who's owning the product when it's done? The financing of it, and safeguards for default. You don't want to invest money in a very long-term project and the vendor goes bankrupt, or the project doesn't get built. So you're trying to protect the taxpayer money. In compliance, is there anything else that they need to do to change this? The next slide. This is a list of what we just found that's going on, been talked about in the papers, that been posted on entities' websites. This is a list of some of the projects that were talked about in Palm Beach County. Boca Raton campus, Boynton Beach Town Square, Riviera Beach, the City Hall, all that complex, Lake Worth Beach, Atlantis, Palm Beach County. When you look at that list, that's about $3.6 billion worth of development potential within the county alone. And one of the things about P3s that we have to be careful of is that they have long terms, 10 to 99 years. One of these on the list entails a 99-year lease for the property. So, that's significant. And when you look at these arrangements, you want to make sure that it is something that is going to be sustainable. I mean, you're getting rid of the property for 99 years. You want to make sure that your city, your village, the town, you're getting your value out of letting that property go. There also is a revenue sharing. Public bonds could be financed with it. So there's a lot of intricacies into this type of a deal. And that's one of the things, is that it's been taken, the decision for these P3s is not with your normal purchasing and finance folks. This is the senior leadership of your towns, of your cities, and they're making economic development decisions. And that's good that this structure was put in there. But on our end, that's one of those things that we have to try and do what oversight we can into these mega dollar deals. So that was, okay. So another thing that we do outreach, training, and assistance. That's a lot of what our department does. This was the Palm Beach Gardens 2025 Vendor Open House. It's an annual event that they have. We've been invited back for the last 3 years. John has been the guest speaker for all 3 years, so he opens the event for them. And you can see Lisa and Sonia there, and John and I talking to the Riviera Beach purchasing director. We got to interface with all these activities, with all these other entities that are there. And so not only did we get to talk to the vendor community, 113 people in attendance, but we also got to talk to the representatives from all those other agencies. And it was very productive, very fruitful. We get a lot of phone calls after those events, a lot of vendors or people from these towns or other entities calling us, asking us questions about how we do business. So that was very helpful. And now the training. This was, we did 2 trainings. One was for Palm Springs and the other was for the city of Riviera Beach. For Palm Springs, the finance director invited us over to give a speech promoting integrity and accountability in government and a little lessons learned. Everybody loves war stories, so they love to hear, you know, what we found and what we did about it. But we went to Palm Springs and trained new staff that they had in the finance department. That was very helpful for them and for us to meet them and to present that training. The photo you see is from Riviera Beach. Their new purchasing director did a lunch and learn, and that's in the Fire Station 87, their brand new station, the EOC, Emergency Operations Center. Gorgeous facility, just absolutely spectacular. You only see about 3 of the TVs there, but the whole room was lined in these big plasma TVs, so it was very impressive. But so John and I and Sonia went out there and we did a little presentation for them, so that was good. And the last is the assistance part of this, and in this one, we do get a lot of questions. We get a lot of calls from entities, emails, asking us to help them provide guidance or do what we can. Now, we're not consultants. We can't tell them what to do, but what we like to do is just educate them, let them know what's out there that they can see, where to look for something, perhaps a website that has some more information or a contact somewhere else where they did such a thing. So some of the questions we got over the last 6 months is purchasing food for an employee training event allowed? And the answer is, like a lot of the work we do, depends. So, you know, we have to talk them through that one. Can you assist us in establishing a new contract oversight division at another IG office? The Contract Oversight Division is somewhat unique in the world of the AIG, only now is it starting to gain traction. My team, we're all purchasing people. We weren't born and raised in the IG environment or a law environment. We were all purchasing and finance and grants, and we're learning the IG part of it. But that gives us a unique ability in being able to find and identify where there may be issues. So we get a lot of calls because a lot of places want to start up a contract oversight or inspections division. Somebody called and asked for best practices once. I love this one. Are separations of duty required by law? Obviously, there was some question going on at an entity somewhere, and the answer is sadly no, unless they specify it themselves, but you're not going to find someplace that says, no, you can't move your procurement function, or you know, there's nothing that prohibits moving the purchasing function to, let's say, the accounts payable or finance section. You know, you don't want to do it, but so we have a lot of those discussions, best practices. Are advance payments permissible? Absolutely not, but there are always exceptions, so that was a fun one. Donated funds, that's a unique one. There's apparently people out there who want to donate to the city for fire equipment, for parks, for playgrounds, and so we've gotten a few questions on, okay, somebody wants to give us money for this, how do we do that? And so we have a long discussion about that. And last but not least, we actually found a municipality that signed a contract, but they were missing a whole bunch of clauses in there. So we sent them to our tips and trends, and especially when it comes to the public records clauses, and their attorney modified it and got it signed. So that was good for us. Okay.
Mr. Montero, could I ask
Yes,
a
sir.
question? And you got to it with the technical. I realize you don't offer ongoing technical assistance through the entire process for procurement. If someone were to give you a draft proposal, do you do any kind of review of the whole proposal that they've worked on? Or can you?
That has been attempted in the past, and no, we can't comment. They've said, oh, here's our new purchasing rules, and we can't review your document for you that way, but we might direct them to entities that we think have, let's say, really good purchasing rules in there, or they want an example of an ethics provision. It's like, we have the county ordinance, but we want to tighten it up and have something more. What entities have an ethics provision of their own, and we'll direct them to that.
The second part, back on your contract oversight and evaluations near the beginning, ongoing formal reviews and ongoing investigative activities, how do you get those? How do you find out about those?
Some of it's hit or miss. Some of it is assigned to us. Like, we'll get a complaint in correspondence. We'll begin by doing a preliminary. And if something during the preliminary we think might be more, that, let's say the allegation seems like it might be supportable, we'll brief John and Calinthia, we'll talk about it, and we'll decide we need to make this formal. And then we'll go in and we'll do a formal, we'll start it up as a formal review and ongoing. Some of them, like the surtax one, I've been monitoring that for years, and that always has the potential to become a report at some point. And so when I get enough information, I may turn that into a report. And then we have ones where they're out in the field and they find something. And prime example is we had an issue with what was supposed to be an inspection of a library construction project, and it turned into a report where the contractor was eventually arrested by the Department of Finance for submitting false insurance documents. So, we walk into these things and we see the red flags there, and then we'll pursue it.
Okay. Any other questions?
Oh, yes.
Yes, sir.
You frightened me with your revelation about this statute regarding the public-private partnerships in this regard. Developers generally have incredible experience with complex transactions and contracts. Elected officials, especially municipal officials, often don't. They get elected because they want to serve their community, but may not have that level of sophistication or education or experience. Is there anything that can be done to help protect them and help them protect their municipalities from being essentially shot like ducks in a barrel?
You want this? I'm going to defer.
Yeah, in fact, just when, I think it was the day of or the day after we put this tips and trend out, we had one of our smaller municipalities call up and say, thank you. This really opened his eyes. He didn't realize, he was getting involved, looking at a public-private enterprise starting to go. And he said, this just opened my eyes that this is so much more involved than I thought. And so the best we can do is like through this tips and trends, I think the point of this, that's not comprehensive, but what it does, it puts the word out. It goes to all of the city managers and elected officials. Hey, if you get involved in this is more complex than you may have thought, at least for them. Then if they would call us up, you need to be getting with your general counsel, your counsel, attorney, to be helping you out on this, because this is complex. And we can point them more to some of the the laws and regulations, but that's part of the benefits of the tips and trends. And again, goes back to this whole office, which is really unique, and again is growing across the United States. We're one of the first that's had these contract oversight and evaluations, because this is where the money is being spent, in municipalities and in contracts and grants and these type of things. And so we can provide oversight and assistance. And back to Dr. Cruz, this kind of relates also. In the IG profession. We have Green Book, have what we call Green Book. There's Professional Association of Inspector General standards, books that are out that we have standards and Yellow Book auditing standards from government standards that we have to obviously abide by to keep our independence. And so we have, in Tony's role, it's a lot of judgment using to make sure we don't go over the line into becoming management. Because to be independent, to be accredited as an independent and objective organization, part of that criteria that we're viewed at, you also have to keep out of management decisions. And so we can point to rules and regs and help folks, but we can't get involved in, even though Tony, I'm sure he's done that in his past, you know, he could lay out a program and write the policy and nurse them all along, but now we've crossed over into that management area. But so I hope that answers kind of both your questions, that's what we can do, at least, is point them a lot of times. This is more complex than you think, and we can help you on this. So.
Thank you, John. And Tony.
Are there any more questions for Tony?
Question also about the 3Ps. So that list that you provided, how do you learn about those deals? Is that something that you're just sort of coming upon, or are you being notified in some way?
The forte of my team is that we're on the computer, we're on the internet, we're on entities' websites. We're constantly seeking little bits of information. You never know what's actually going to help you down the line somewhere. We collect a lot of documents, we pass around a lot of news stories, and we're just trying to keep in touch with the trend of what's going on. Commission meetings, we'll watch a lot of commission meetings, we'll go to their websites and just poke around and see what's there. And it's amazing how many times something that we didn't think was related suddenly comes up, and we could pass it on to one of the other divisions and say, oh, you may want to look at this. Oh, here's an area that's interesting maybe for audit, or hey, investigations, they said this at a committee meeting, you may want to, you know. So there's a lot of information there.
But do you automatically do even a preliminary investigation when you hear about sort of a gigantic deal like the one in West Palm, for example, or may you not do anything once you learn that that's happened?
Right, we'll talk about it. If something significant comes up, a lot of times I'll go into John's office, and John, I'm like, did you see what they said here in this newspaper article? And he'll be like, yeah, and he's like, look into it, find some information, and then we'll reevaluate it and see if this is something we should monitor. We monitor a lot of projects. Even though nothing may be going on right now, we know that in the future, something may come of it. A complaint may come in, it may be a project somebody wants to audit, or investigations may need to look at. So we do all the preliminary up front. We'll have the documents, we'll have the rules, the regs, everything all laid out, and it's helpful to everybody as a team, you know, an integrated office, to be able to have almost a library of knowledge. They'll come to us and say, can you find this on their website? It's like, oh yeah, here it is. It's in these meeting minutes. Here's the resolution that they passed. There you go. Shoot it out to a printer and they're set. So, you're welcome. Thank you. Sorry. Jumped ahead here. There we go.
Okay, thank you, Tony. And I might, you know, by our IG ordinance, cities and the county are supposed to, they must notify us on procurement activities when they're doing procurement activities out there. But there's a number of spending on grants and different things that they're not required to inform us. So we have to go out and do this type of work. So there's some things they have to notify us, and then we go selectively to these contract selection meetings and the meetings we go to, and we selectively do this. I have to say, I've got Tony and he's got 3 folks, so a total of 4 folks who do this contract oversight and procurement, which is, again, billions and billions of dollars that are being spent in the county to try to provide some type of oversight. So it's a lot of judgment of those very limited resources of where are we going to do. So we do a lot of, again, preliminary looks and looking in, and then, again, it's a judgment then, is there something more that we need to be getting more involved in? And as we see, the more involved we need to be, it may turn into a full-blown formal project, where now we're going to write a plan out rather than just monitoring and that preliminary looks. So they're very involved, and again, a great asset. Channel 20 asked me to tell you that there's a button somewhere in front of you to turn your microphones on, so our folks who are listening on TV, there's a button someplace there, I'm not sure where it is, that when you speak, if you would turn that on. So now I'm going to turn it over to Hillary Beaujean. She's our Director of Audit. And again, we've got a project she'll talk about that's been in the news here of recent quite a bit. And again, Hillary, like the whole team, is another great find, and she's not only a certified, she has 1 million certifications that I could tell you. She's a CPA, and I'll turn it over to you, Hillary.
Good afternoon. My name is Hillary Beaujean. I'm the Director of Audit. Okay, so over the past 6-month period, we had 7 ongoing audits with 1 issued report, which had 4 recommendations that were accepted by the town. There were over $182,000 of question costs related to that audit, and I'm going to cover that next. So this audit of the contract between the town of Palm Beach and John C. Cassidy Air Conditioning was a routine audit, and it was performed by Jennifer Timms, who's here today. We found the town paid the contractor for HVAC and refrigeration repair services that lacked supporting documentation required by the contract, such as work tickets, supplier invoices, and written estimates. Additionally, the contractor's invoices lacked information required by the contract, such as the purchase order number, as well as it lacked information to verify whether amounts billed were in compliance with the contract, such as itemized labor parts or labor and parts, which are used to determine the markup. As a result, we could not verify that the town was paying the actual cost of materials and equipment and parts, or that the markup paid by the town was in accordance with their terms and conditions. The instances of a lack of a documentation totaled to $182,000. And additionally, we found that the town paid for the same invoice on more than 1 occasion, and that resulted in that identified cost of $358. So this is the report that John just mentioned. It wasn't published in our 6-month period. It was released about 2 weeks ago. So we're reporting on it today since it was significant and covered in the media. So this audit was of the City of Pahokie's accounts payable, expenditures, and cash disbursements, and was initiated actually based on a request from the city. The audit was performed by Kathy Davis, who's here today. She was the lead auditor, and actually every auditor in our division contributed to this project. Overall, we audited 1,800 transactions totaling over $5.5 million. We found widespread systemic noncompliance with the city's written guidance, including its purchasing ordinance, its purchasing policy, credit card and travel policies, as well as contracts and agreements. Examples of that noncompliance included not following proper purchasing procedures, such as obtaining a purchase order or the proper level of approval. They also classified non-emergency purchases as an emergency to expedite processing or bypass approval requirements. They did not properly document the receipt of goods and services purchased or travel activities and expenditures. And we also found a lack of sufficient documentation for many of the city expenditures that we tested. We found that the city did not always pay vendors promptly in compliance with Florida statute and paid sales tax when it was not required. We also found instances of a former city manager using the city credit card for purchases with no benefit to the city. Those included personal travel, subscriptions, and a rental car upgrade. That former city manager also gave commissioners at the time permission to violate the travel policy. And in that instance, the commissioners purchased meals on their city credit card after receiving a payment for meal per diem. We also found that certain commissioners and that same former city manager used their city credit card to purchase upgraded seating on flights. Additionally, we found that the city did not maintain accurate records for capital assets and IT equipment. And lastly, we found that the city lacked adequate controls over its vendor file and lacked written guidance for its IT processes. These findings resulted in over $1.9 million in question costs and $18,000 in identified costs. Overall, we found that the non-compliance with city policy occurred across city departments and at all personnel levels. The issues we identified in our audit had continued for at least 10 years, despite being reported by the city's external financial auditors, as well as in past OIG audits and investigations. Contributing factors that we found were that personnel lacked knowledge of the responsibilities and requirements that were in their purchasing ordinance and policies. This was especially concerning because it was prevalent at the city manager and finance director levels, who are responsible for ensuring that city's expenditures benefit the city and that they're properly accounted for. The turnover in these key positions contributed some to that issue. There was a lot of turnover in the city manager over the period that we audited, as well as the finance director. But in addition to that, one of the former city managers willfully did not comply with city policy, and he held that position for the majority of our audit and several years prior to that. He's no longer with the city. We provided a copy of our report to the state attorney's office and the Commission on Ethics for their consideration. And in addition to our recommendations, we also suggested that the city seek assistance from an outside management company to help them implement the policy updates and implementations and training that they need to get back on track. The city accepted our recommendations and our suggestion to obtain outside assistance. Are there any questions on that audit before I move forward? Okay, this slide and the next are a snapshot of our in-process and planned audits for the fiscal year. We currently have 6 audits in process, which excludes the Pahokee audit that was just released. And every year, our audit division conducts a county-wide risk assessment, which determines the global areas that we audit each year. A global area is basically a process, function, or program that applies to multiple entities within our jurisdiction. Using that global area approach allows us to have more flexibility and coverage in our audit plan. The 8 planned global audit areas shown here were they're not shown there. There they are. These planned areas were selected during that risk assessment process, and we plan to launch audits in these areas. And that concludes the audit activities. Moving forward. You're welcome.
Thank you, Hillary. Yeah, that was an extensive audit, and it took a long time to do it. Just during the course of that audit, I forget how many city managers turned over, procurement officers turned over, so a lot of the delays that we've been asked, it took a long time to do that. Well, when the staff is just turning over so rapidly, they can't even locate where the documents are themselves. And so it took a while just in dealing with them to get the information we needed to do the audit. But they were cooperative, but it was just difficult for them. And many times, they either couldn't locate it or the documentation didn't exist. But it took them time to find that out. Next, we're going to talk about our training and outreach. And I'm going to ask Calinthia Dillard to talk about that. So Calinthia, would you come up and give a talk?
Good afternoon. I'm Calinthia Dillard. I'm the General Counsel for the Office of Inspector General. It's hard to believe, but it will be 10 years next month that I've been with the office. So I've been asked to come forward to give you a little bit of information, more details. You've heard a little bit about the training and outreach that we do, but I want to give you some, a little more detail for your information. But when you walk into our office, there's a poster that has OIG values, and two of the items on that poster are professionalism and excellence. And one of the ways that we really pursue those values is the amount of training that we do for our staff internally. Part of our strategic plan is that we have a high-performing team. So we spend a lot of time and money, quite frankly, to making sure we're trained to be successful in what we do. So that training includes going out externally to other service providers, but also within the office. I do training within the office. I monitor our legislative session, so if there's new legislation that impacts what we do or the agencies that we oversee, we make sure we keep up to date on those things. Evangeline Rentz does training every year on public records laws and records retention. Everybody who's willing has an opportunity to provide training. Our IT specialist, Jeff, actually did a training yesterday on things that we should be mindful on with regard to IT issues, to make sure we're aware of spam and the laws regarding malware and things of that nature. Stu also does training on red flags. As you know, a lot of what we do in our reports, we recommend training of agencies. So it's important for us to model that behavior so that we can give the advice. But we also do external training. We go out to the cities, we speak to city managers, we speak to employees to make sure they have some of the same information that we have, because we find that oftentimes many of the problems that exist are not necessarily due to intentional fraud. It's really sometimes about a lack of training and understanding about policies and procedures. Sometimes you find that the actions of staff don't necessarily reflect the actual policy. So we make sure there's alignment and make sure there's consistency, and that is reconciled with the current law that may apply to that particular area. We spend a lot of time doing outreach as well. We believe that outreach is important because we want to educate the public about what we do. We want the public to know that we are a resource. We're hoping that is an opportunity to provide tips if people have information about things that may not rise to the level of a criminal offense, but that doesn't mean it should not be addressed. So we invite them in to come to us to give us information. If it's something that falls within our jurisdiction, we'll deal with it. We have partner agencies. We refer it out if it's not something that fits within our jurisdiction, but we want the public to be aware that we are a resource, that we do add value to our community. We also think that the Outlook provides transparency. We want the public to see exactly what we do and to know that we're here. We think that it also builds trust. When we issue a report, we want the community to trust that we do, that we've done it in an independent manner, that we're unbiased, and that there's integrity in our work. And we accomplish that and notify and educate the public with the outreach efforts that we do. So specifically, you see here, there's some training with regard to government employees. John and Stu present weekly to new employees for the county. John reaches out to new city managers when they come aboard. We monitor that. Part of all of the monitoring that our staff does, that includes staying in touch with cities when they have new staff. We can reach out to them and set up meetings to let them know what we do and what their obligations are, quite frankly. They have a duty to let us know if there's misuse of funds over $5,000 when they're having public meetings in the procurement arena. So we provide information through our outreach efforts to make them aware of those requirements. Stu, John, and I also attended the City of Riviera Beach Utility District meeting after our report came out regarding the investigation into the improper reporting regarding the water. So the board members asked us to come out because they had some questions about that, as you can imagine, with all the attention from the media. So we did go out and present to them to answer their questions. And we mentioned before, with regard to the public, Tony is pretty well known about for what he does in the procurement and contract area. They attended the Palm Beach Gardens Vendor Day. John spoke to FAU, the MBA students, and Hillary has spoken to the FAU Accounting Student Association. student has gone out to Rotary clubs, and I was actually invited to speak to the Historical Society. It initially started as a discussion about women in leadership, and it turned into, can you tell me more about that Riviera Beach report? So whenever we have an opportunity to tell people about what we do and to educate the public, we take that opportunity. You've probably seen John in the last few weeks talking to the media about some of the reports we have. He's our official spokesperson, but he will call in staff to answer some of those detailed questions if they have them. But we do whatever we can to really support his determination to make sure the media is willing to put out the information once we release reports. I spoke recently to the Florida PAC, which is the Florida Police and Accreditation Coalition. So that organization is made up of people who work for IGs, people who work for law enforcement, and corrections officers. So they asked me to come out and to give a presentation on ethics. I've done that for 2 years in a row, and they've actually asked me to come back for their next session. So again, that's another example of us trying to build partnerships in what we do. And John mentioned that I'm now on the board for the National IG Association. He is actually in charge of the accreditation program for that organization. So when you're in charge, you get to have your staff involved. So John presents, Stu presents, Tony presents, I present as well. So we're well represented in that organization. And as a result of that, we get phone calls from all across the country asking us questions about how our office operates. Been invited to talk about the contra oversight, because as they mentioned before, that is not a common area in IG offices. And then I got a call recently about my function. When we had the last IG conference, I actually presented on the role of the general counsel. Oh, and I did want to mention from one of the pictures here, you see a table. We partnered with the Ethics Commission during Ethics Awareness Month to give information to the public about what the two agencies do. Even though we work quite closely, sometimes the public doesn't necessarily understand the distinction between the two. So when we have an opportunity to work together to get information out, we do that as well. And before I move on, I do want to mention publications. We released our annual report during the 6 months, and we do tips and trends frequently. All the divisions work on those. Tony talked about the public-private partnerships, but that's something that all of the divisions do when an issue that the city or the county employees should be aware of. And we get information from those from the monitoring process, and also trying to be aware of new legislation that comes down that people they get busy and they may not necessarily know about recent changes in the law. So we use tips and trends as an opportunity to communicate that information. Budget and staffing. So as you may be aware, we were initially set up with the idea that we would have 40 members of our staff. We've never received funding in that amount. We initially it was contemplated that we would receive 40 positions, half for county and half for city. After litigation, cities do not contribute to our funding, unfortunately. But through our working with the county, we are now approved for 3 additional slots. So we're up to 30 positions. And so we're excited about that. We have 26 on hand and have some openings that are published, and hopefully we'll be hiring some additional staff in the near future. But we do what we can with the resources we have. We make the most of it, and again, we try to efficiently and effectively add value to the voters of the citizens of Palm Beach County. So when you take a look at our budget, which is $4.4 million for our 30 positions, and as John likes to remind us, that's really the cost of a McDonald's hamburger or cheeseburger, I guess, pre-inflation, as well as a half of a cup of coffee if you're going to Dunkin' Donuts and not Starbucks. So looking forward with our plans, objectives, and initiatives, we will continue to execute our strategic plan, which goes until 2028. We will continue to execute the audit plan, expand our outreach activities, and adapt and overcome issues as they come forward. And lastly, one thing I did want to highlight, we're looking at exploring on how we can use IT to better do our work. We hear about AI over and over again, and that's something that government hasn't fully embraced, but we're hoping to find ways that we can use it to make our work more effective, and make sure we comply with county guidelines in doing so. But the other side of that coin is educate our staff, because AI is something that sometimes, people who don't want to do the wrong thing may take advantage of. So as we're getting evidence and evaluating that, we have to be aware of how AI can impact that as well. So it's an educational process, and we're hoping in the next few months to develop a policy and determine how we can use that in what we do as well. Are there any?
Yes, Ms. Dillard, just back to your staffing, on the 7 years I've been on the Ethics Commission and on the IG committee, this has been a big ongoing issue, and over time there's been one or two added. Is it sort of an ongoing thing? Every year we would see if you could get another one or two people until you can get to that, at least get to 40. Is it sort of a standard push every year that you'll try to see if you can work? And I realize the county, the budget situation, you have to fit in to that whole scheme. But is it sort of one of your plans just to keep pushing forward on staffing?
So I want to give due respect to county administration. We do work well together, and there are a lot of requests that come forward for increased staff or other budgetary considerations. And so every few years we do make a request, and sometimes we get everything we ask for and sometimes we don't. And this last time we did ask for 3 positions based on an analysis of our office and our needs currently. And the list of matters that we have before us, we thought 3 would be a good number moving forward, at least for the next fiscal year. And we did receive a yes, thankfully, for that request.
Okay, good. Yeah, you show them all the money you've been saving over each year.
Believe
More than
me,
pays for that, right?
we come with a list of reasons to justify our request.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you. And just while the slide is up there, again, we've been peer reviewed. Every 3 years, we're peer reviewed by the National Association, and every 3 years, we're also by the state for accreditation of our investigative side. And each time, they've said something like this: the last peer review that we had in 2024, on this slide, out of their report, and again, the peer review are folks who look at agencies across the United States, that they're, for the sheer size of operations of our office that we oversee, your office jurisdiction and responsibility is unparalleled by any other government inspector general office. We're I think the only office that I am aware of. Most IGs just are single agency, single organization offices. Like, for example, just the county. We have the county plus the 39 municipalities and the 2 special taxing districts. And other IGs, they just have their one organization. There's some IGs just for a major city that are for that city or for that county. So we are unique in the fact that we have this wide-spanning jurisdiction that.
Yeah, John, next time they come, can you have them add one more line? And by the way, you need 10 more people.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up here. And I always like to wrap it up and just kind of summarizing, since we've been around, what have we done? What's our office done since we've been around from June of 2010 to the present? Again, over 13,600 hotline calls that have come into the office, calls and correspondence. Again, many of those calls, a good portion of those calls are really not our jurisdiction. But what we add, we are an outlet, a place for citizens, people in government, out of government, when they often don't know who to call. They call us up, and then we'll get them linked up. We never tell anybody. Our motto is never to tell anybody, not my job, and hang up. We don't know. We find if it's not us, we'll link them up to the proper organization or agency of the place that they need to do, at least to try to help them handle their issue. Dollar question cost, 25.6 in potential cost savings. Made over 1,300 recommendations to try to make sure that we're doing our business not only more compliant, but better. Are we doing government better? And we have almost a 92% acceptance rate, which for IGs, that's pretty good. We try to, when we make our recommendations, we try to make them realistic and achievable. Share best practices, prevent bad practices. Over the years, 22 arrests that's come as a direct result of our work. There's been many more arrests that when we've made referrals that things have come in and we've referred it to law enforcement, but we only like that. These are ones that have come as a direct result of our audit or investigation that we can say that, no, we played a substantial role that resulted in the arrest. Again, 700, look at that, 736 cases referred to law enforcement or Commission on Ethics. That oftentimes they would not have got to law enforcement or Commission on Ethics without our office. It's people, again, they don't know who to call, they call us and we get it to the right place. That concludes our presentation. Is there any questions that I can
Any
answer?
discussion from questions?
I do
Go
have
ahead.
one question. I hope my microphone is on. Well, first, I think it's only right for me to commend your small but mighty team of professionals. I can't say how impressed I am to hear what you do and how you're able to accomplish so many important things for the people of Palm Beach County with such a small team. So kudos to each of you who contribute. My question is, with the audits, you conduct the audit, findings are made, recommendations are issued. What is the next step? Is there some type of monitoring, or is that even part of the work that you do to make sure that those steps are implemented so that you're not seeing these same, local governments or county entities coming back before your office?
That's an excellent question about our follow-ups. And yes, every recommendation that's accepted, every 6 months, it's either one that if they close it out and implement it while we're there, we note that and make a document, but again, most of them are not. And so every 6 months by our standards, and these are national standards that you're required to follow up, and in our office, we have a policy every 6 months. We will go out on every open recommendation to see what's the status of it, and we will follow up until it's implemented. And we usually will ask to send evidence. That's nice that they say they implemented it, but we ask for, okay, what's evidence? Like if it's a policy, if it's training, we ask for, okay, documentation of training. So we'll make sure that we're satisfied enough that it has been implemented. And if we had more folks, a lot of inspector generals go out and re-inspect. We just don't have the resources to do that, but a lot of the larger organizations that they may do a re-audit or re-inspection or a follow-up on site. Sometimes we will go out on site also, but that's what we do. We continue to follow up with them until it's done. On lines with recommendations, I'm often asked by citizens, why can't I make them do something? And the whole Inspector General concept, it's designed, as Inspector Generals, we have wide latitude on what we can do, what we can self-initiate. The requirement for organizations to provide us information it's required. And so we have a wide jurisdiction of where we can look and what we can do. But kind of one of our checks and balances are, we make recommendations, and then it goes to the public and the elected officials and we try to keep it visible. Like we say, we shine the light on the problem. and try to provide a solution. But then it comes back to management, elected official, and the citizens to implement that. Or if it's criminal, we refer that to law enforcement.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
Yes, I just echo everything State Attorney Cox said in terms of the team. I think it's clearly been highlighted how much work the entire team is doing, so I really commend you. I just wanted to specifically highlight the investigative report regarding the Riviera Beach water. The findings of that report were so highly concerning, especially as a former resident of Riviera Beach. So I really commend the work. I commend the team on bringing those findings to the public's attention, and I really hope that Riviera Beach, moving forward, ensures that nothing like this ever happens again.
Mr. Reisinger, do you have anything?
I just learned so much. Thanks. That was really interesting, and I do commend you all for not just doing the work, but being here and seeing your faces. Thank you for everything that you do, and I look forward to more in the future.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you all for your time. I know you're volunteers in this endeavor, and I always appreciate, and we send our reports to each of you as they come out and try to keep you informed, and I've always got an open ear. If there's anything ever that you've got a recommendation or hear something, and I'm glad we've got a great relationship that's what happens. So I want to encourage you anytime for our new members too, if you have a question, a comment that you're hearing something, we're all ears and ready to communicate, to talk back and forth, have a conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, General Carey. Okay, the next item, is there any public comment? Mr. Radcliffe?
Yes, my name is Richard Radcliffe. I'm the Executive Director of the Palm Beach County League of Cities. And I wasn't going to say anything, but sitting here and then looking around, I'm the last man standing. And I have to invite you, and I'm very encouraged with, because these seats were created by a group in response to what had happened. And Terry and Dave Arenberg, and you are sitting in an esteemed place. It's 15 years ago. 7 county commissioners, 4 were removed from office. We have 204 elected officials, and my job as the executive director for the Palm Beach County League of Cities, I work with all the cities. So I inherited the wonderful job of trying to wade through all this. But out of 204 cities, 2 people were removed from office. But there was a tremendous outcry. And there was a vote and a referendum that people said they want to have an inspector general. They want to have a commission on ethics. And then we had to create it. And all the people that sat in these seats before you helped put this down. And the code is the code. And there's only 2 commission on ethics people here, but there's 5 that's worked very hard through the years. And I'm so encouraged to see the level of professionalism and what has happened in the time, because it's 15 years. And it was rough in the beginning, very, very rough in the beginning. It was not easy times. When people talked, they said every politician's crooked, everybody is. And it was a terrible time, but slowly, we built something as a community. We did it together, the League of Cities, the county, the Commission on Ethics. And it wasn't always fun, and it wasn't always easy, but we were always civil and working together. And the one thing I have to say is I've been through, I guess, 4, maybe 5 Commission on Ethics executive directors. They've all been wonderful, and this is our 2nd. But it seemed like in the time when John came in and the Inspector General and things took a turn really for more professional. I sat here, I've been watching these, and I don't know, I was involved in the drafting committee years ago, and we go through this, and it's a good exercise. I'm sorry not more people are here. But a lot of the things are just going down. They're not necessary. And the reason why this is working is the Commission on Ethics is teaching. We're out there teaching, and what John brought to the table, he brought a level of professionalism that we hadn't had before. You saw they're not going to cross the line and do your management for you, because a lot of cities want to go, here, will you help me out here? No, they don't do that, but they do best practices. And although we've disagreed on things, I've never heard anyone say that John wasn't a gentleman and that there wasn't fair play. And this was not a happy time in the beginning, but it has evolved. And you here are inherited a process that I believe, arguably, but I could defend this, that we have the best Commission on Ethics and Inspector General system in the country. I go to Tallahassee, they want to set up, they don't even know how to set up a lobbyist registration in places they don't know whether they're going to do it for. We've had it. We have lobbyist registration here. We didn't get into it, but that's here. We have that. We have these systems in place, and they work very, very well. So I think you have a history that kind of rolls, and I wanted to not scare you, but introduce you and let you know of how hard all these people have worked and how you've inherited an esteemed position. Judge Rogers, wonderful people, helped move this forward. And now we're at a place where I think in the country we have maybe the best system going. And I wanted to thank everybody. And again, being the last man standing, I felt there was an obligation to let you know how this transpired. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Radcliffe. Those are great words. Totally agree with them. Okay, moving on. Is there any new business to come forward to the Inspector General Committee? Okay, I'd like to thank you all. General Carey, Clinthia, Dillard, thank you and your staff for great work, and Barbara. We'll see you in 6 months. Okay, meeting is adjourned.